What is up, everyone? Michael Damon here with the latest episode of Starbeam.one Stand Up and Shine and Shill. It's a series I put together to keep people up to date with my project Starbeam.one, which has now been officially, or thereabouts, in progress for 4 years now. This is our 4th year that we've been at it since October of 2019. I cannot believe that. And today we're going to be announcing a new beta. But first, this show is modeled after the agile methodology of a stand-up, where you tell your teammates what you're working on, what you're going to be working on, and any sort of friction points that you are encountering. And I've added so much more. Let's begin. All right, great. So we have made it to beta 2, and I'm almost kicking myself for not putting up the 4 years. I didn't think about it until I sat down to actually start recording, but yes, it has been 4 years now since I have been at this, and that started in October of 2019, and I was researching blockchain, and I was researching another technology, Blazor.net, and I wanted to build a blockchain marketplace on using Blazor, and it was kind of a novel idea, and at the very least, I wanted to have some way of proving my skill set at the time, and I've been doing nothing but that since. And so here we are 4 years later, and we, as you probably know, we did take a detour about a year and a half in, where I decided that the market at that time was a little too saturated with blockchain marketplaces. So I was wondering why we didn't have this using regular traditional technology, and here we are. I just wanted to find out, why haven't we been doing blockchain type activities with digital ownership using just regular technology? And that's what Starbeam.one's all about. So here we are. And 4 years later, we are now in beta 2. And, we kind of talked about having 3 betas, I believe, and then we're going to have the release to market in February. Well, as we'll find out, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that with this current beta. It took a little longer than I was expecting, and hopefully this will be the last time we do this, but I'm going to add one more beta, and that is going to push this out to an April 2, 2024. So that's 4/2/24 as a date for version 1. Hopefully we can stick to that and get that done in 4 betas rather than 3 as originally planned. And so beta 2, it's really exciting about this is that we now have email policies, and it's probably not as exciting as maybe some of the other features we have, but now we have a little bit of foundation going forward, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But moving on to the second item here is that we have a contest. I think this is actually really exciting, is that we finally have had a contest where some members have been asking for this, and finally we have this here, and we're going to get into a little bit of the details about that. We're partnering up with Vortex AI art community, and I'm going to produce and provide a link here in the description for the YouTube video, and just look in the description and you'll find a link with all the information. But it's essentially just you generate a AI work that goes along with the theme of being spooky, and we're going to have a drawing here in I believe it's on the 8th, or vote, and we'll have a winner here for first, second, and third prizes, and that will happen on the 8th of October. And it's the first contest that we've done, and I've been really hesitant for doing contests because of certain I guess feeling towards it. I don't want to say they're gimmicky, but they're I don't feel comfortable doing them, and mostly it's because I've never done one, and so but now here we are, we're partnering up with Vortex, who has done a lot of contests and successfully have done them, and so I'm really happy partnering up with them, and they're really comfortable doing that, and I'm just like, great, that sounds awesome. We can host the products, and then you can run the contest, and then it's everything works out. So that's what we're going to be doing, and again, look at the description for the link. And finally, I just kind of want to mention here with the beta 3, the next big milestone here is going to be December 5th. And so we're doing 2-month betas, and that's kind of how the schedule we're doing here. So every 2 months we can have a new beta. The next one is December 5th. All right, next slide. All right, so what did I do? I finished the email policy, and it feels like that's all I did, because it was just like one thing after another, and just getting the quality down, and all the happy path was really easy. Like, that was kind of 80% of the work, but the 20% remaining was like 80% of the time that I spent on that. Did I get that right? So like the first 20% of my time was that first 80%, and then 80% of my time was that last 20% of effort there. So just getting all the use cases and edge cases, and so there's actually 2 main paths here. One is you create a new account, and you need an email. And that's really straightforward. That's actually the easy part. But the other part is if you already have an account and you own you register a new email address, you have to really think about a lot of different scenarios around that. So that just took a lot of time. And then there were things kept popping up sort of thing. And it's over, it's done, and we have that deployed this morning, and I'm thankfully, there haven't been too many issues yet. There was one right out of the gate because one of the issues that we're running into is that when you use an iPhone or a mobile device, you're not really using the the device's browser. You're using perhaps the application's browser, and that can be completely different from the device browser, and so it has a completely different state, has a completely different cookie, and that just adds a lot more hassle to it than it really needs to be. So we're a browser application, and we work and live off the browser. It makes it a lot easier, and it's also a cheaper way of development, by the way. So we don't have another app that you install on an app store. That means that there's that much more code that we don't have to manage, and the support costs go down, except for instances like these where you've got cookie state, and so that causes a lot of different hassle. So in any case, that is now out there and deployed, and it's ready for use or testing, depending on your perspective of that. It's one of those things where every time I tested it in a personal environment and my local machine, and every time I had someone test it, worked flawlessly, and nothing happened, no problems. But of course, that doesn't really compare to the real world and getting it out there to all of the myriad of devices that are out there. And so that was really challenging, and it's still a huge stress point, but we've had a few people successfully migrate over, and so that is in place. Okay, so the other thing, in addition to that, is improving the OAuth 2 story. So what happens, everything works really well when things sign in, and they typically do, like I would say like high 90 percentile rates, between 95 and 100%, probably like 99% of success rate of signing in, no problem. But what happens when you don't sign in successfully? Well, it was really terrible. There was no message. It was just a white screen. And so I wanted to improve that and provide a little bit more context and maybe some directions in case you run into a problem, what you can do, kind of explaining, hey, we live in the browser. The state is in the browser. You might want to check your browser cookies, and I hate suggesting it, but you might want to delete them because that's so disruptive. I hate really suggesting that because I hate when I have to do that. But that might be a solution to the problem sort of thing. And so that's in place, and that took some time. Okay, then moving on here, for beta 2, some things I did add is that I have gifted all existing artists 25 units of capacity for their featured market accounts and 5 units of capacity for their standard market accounts, because everyone's basically run out of capacity in our slow time. I'm kind of wanting to juice things up again, and so I also did another feature ad there for the VA Vortex contest that they were running, and so they needed a little bit more capacity for their work, and we were going to do that for a community market, and that actually does make sense. Well, hopefully we'll have that in place for next month, but for this month we just increased the capacity, and so that's in there. And so for beta 2, all artists have a little bit more capacity to work with, so start producing again and use up all that capacity. And then finally, just general quality adjustments, and those are in there, and I'm just so glad it's deployed and I can start watching to see what breaks. Hopefully not too much. Okay, so now what am I doing? Now beta 2 is deployed, and now I have to clean up beta 2. There's some tasks that are there, primarily in the model, and this is going to get kind of tricky because this is the first time that I've actually had to delete model components that have data in them. Usually when there's models that I'm deleting, there's no data in there, or something didn't go right or whatever. There's been no data issues. So there's definitely data there, and they're the old email addresses. They've been migrated to the new email. But now what happens when I go through and I remove these tables, and the data must get deleted with that, or are there errors that get thrown? So I'm going to spend some time finding that out with testing environment using production data. That's been working really well, by the way. And so then it's moving on to beta 3. So beta 2 is kind of tough. It was just one of those things where I spent so much time on that email policy, and it took a lot more time than I was expecting, and I should have expected more time just because it's so central to how accounts are created. But it's going to help so much going forward, right? So the friction that we're going to encounter with the email policy, I'll just round this out, is that, with the new accounts, it's going to help out so much better, and it's going to help reduce the amount of accounts that get created accidentally. That's really what we're after here, and it's going to reduce the support tickets for that. However, there is some friction with the existing accounts, and they are going to run into some problems, so that's kind of the big risk there. Okay, so moving on to beta 3 issues, there's this one final kind of like security-minded issue, and we've talked about this before. What happens if Twitter decides that you broke a rule, and they're not really sure what kind of rule you might have broken? They just figure that you have broken a rule somewhere in their rule book, and they're not going to tell you which rule you've broken. Maybe you didn't really break a rule. They just want to say that you did, and they suspend your account. I'm kind of being facetious here and a little grandiose because of what happened to Lady Leah, and still suspended. We're on day 53, but this happened to her account, and what happened is her account was suspended without a good explanation. So there's no actual rule that was broken or that was specified that was broken. It's just that she broke a rule. And so now her account's suspended. And how does she log in if she's using Twitter and that Twitter is suspended, right? Not just her, but anyone. So anyone can run into this problem. It's not just her. Although this is kind of convenient because now we have a good use case and a good tester, but we've known about this for a while, and we're going to make it so that if you have two-factor authentication, which we support, by the way, you can log in using that, and then we'll prompt you for another OAuth 2 provider. And the other thing is email. Now we've got email. So if you have an email, you can sign in that way. And then once you prove that you own that email, we'll then ask you to associate another OAuth 2 provider. So we'll have that workflow mapped out there. And then finally, it's moving on to administration CMS. What I like about these tasks is that there really aren't a lot of unknowns, and it's just getting them done, right? Like the email policy, there's a lot of unknowns. I really had to think about the different ways that this will impact people, and I still don't feel like I got 100% right. Probably like high 90 percentile, perhaps, but not perfect yet. But hopefully we'll get there. And with these tasks that now we're going to be focused on, I'm hoping that we can gain some ground here, because all I got to do is just get them done. So hopefully we'll have a little more luck going forward. Friction points. Okay, now we're moving on to the fun stuff, and there are a few pieces that we still need to talk about, new items. And we talked about the Razor IDE editor, and these are actually on the way. That's why I have a question mark against, and they haven't arrived yet. And the other thing that's happening now is that there was with each beta, or excuse me, each preview that is released by Visual Studio, there's always a chance that something new could be introduced. And actually for the past couple months, everything's been working pretty good. But this last one, we have a new issue where we've got garbage collection occurring with each key press. And it feels like this shouldn't happen, right? Like I provided my solution with over 150,000 lines of code, over 150 projects, and it's a really good test case. And it would just seem like if someone was using that and they're pressing a few keys, it would be very apparent, very obvious that there are garbage collection sweeps occurring on the solution, and it's very apparent, and it doesn't feel like that's happening. So I'm kind of getting a little concerned about that. It's like, okay, why am I giving code if it's not being used? And here we are. It doesn't seem like, we're getting a lot of progress there. But we do have one major feature that's on the way, so that there's a question mark against that. And hopefully it should be here in the next week or so, so that at least we'll be able to test that out. And that should be really obvious and significant if that is an improvement. Okay, so there's that. And then there's IDE redraw issues. So we're running into a problem where for every debug issue or every debug instance, it's about 15 to 20 seconds delay, either starting up or closing down. That's happening each and every time that I debug, and it is annoying. It is so bad. It's really impacting my view of the debugger, right? This is like if you can just imagine, each and every time you press F5, you have to wait 5 or 6 seconds for it to start up. And then, when to close down, it takes about another 15, 20 seconds while the windows redraw. And this seems like such an obvious fundamental thing that it should be not an issue, right? But it is. And so it is now on my friction points. I'm going to be talking about it every 2 weeks here on this show. And so there's that. And then finally, there's build times. And that's still kind of an issue. That's going to be next here if everything pans out with the Razor IDE editor issues. And that is still there. Okay, moving on. I think I mentioned, Twitter. This is still an issue. They haven't talked. This is the thing about Microsoft. So it says, like Microsoft, they reply to you. You know where you stand with Microsoft. And with Twitter, it's complete silence. And so we still don't have any indication from Twitter, from either Lady Leah, as I mentioned earlier, and also this other issue we have with logins that's been documented and confirmed by Chrome development staff. And so it's one of those things. It's like, wow, at least Microsoft is responsive. At least they acknowledge your existence, which is awesome, and I'm very appreciative of that. So thank you, Microsoft. But Twitter, it's just like, I don't know what to do with this. I keep pinging. So it's a daily ping every day, and I'm pinging them on both issues now. The Google thing actually cleared up finally. So there's some little good news here. The Google, it was cleared up by an appeal button that was on my profile. So whatever happened, it's still unclear what happened. And it seems like there was an automated thing that happened with my account, even though it's been around since 2018. But all I had to do is press appeal, and I was reinstated within a few hours. So that it was awesome, and we can mark that off. Okay, moving right along here, we're going to get into effectiveness levels. Is how you feel about the project in terms of emotion and your feelings. I always say that if we talked about our feelings more, the world would be a better place. And so there's a little bit of emotion here, but it's also kind of rational as well. So I just called it effectiveness levels. And overall, talking about morale, I'm actually a little bit increased now. And it's because I did something I didn't want to do, and that is add another beta. And that's what we're going to be doing. But that's helped out a little bit, right? It's just a little bit more wiggle room that was it reduces the stress that I was facing. So right now, morale is at a 7. Schedule, kind of talking about that, adding a new beta. I'm kind of cheating a little bit, but I think it's necessary, and hopefully this will be the last time I do that. And schedule I'm feeling a little bit better about. And last time I think it was like 6 or 6.5. It's at 7.5. Technology, I'm still on a wait and see with these IDE. I'm not very confident. It's actually a little lower, but the environment's actually working really well. So 7 right now. We'll wait and see. We'll wait until probably next show. I'll have a little bit better grasp on this. Marketing. I don't think it's ever been this high. It's usually around the 4 or 5 area, and it's always been so difficult and challenging to get anywhere with marketing promotions and getting any sort of traction. Just getting people to know about you, right? And this has always been a pain point, as I've discussed here on the show plenty of times. And now we're starting to get a little traction here with VA Vortex and teaming up with VA Vortex and taking care of the contest is kind of exciting. I have to admit it's growing on me a bit. I have been kind of adverse to contests, but I'm starting to get into this, right? It's sort of awesome to have someone take care of that, right? And starbeam.one just hosts the content, and that really works out for me, and that makes a lot of sense for me. And so now here we have something going on with promotion. That's awesome. And along with all the things that have been happening with Lady Leah and having her account suspended, she's now helping out with the starbeam.one handle and producing great renders, and we're starting to get a little promotion there as well. And there's also someone I'm talking to, I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, who has content, social media content management experience. So that would be awesome to have someone kind of take over our social channels and help out with that as well. And that's really well needed. So I'm feeling a little bit better about marketing in general. And this is the highest score, even though really we haven't made much more traction or had much more efficiency, with gaining followers or whatnot. Although we are gaining followers with the contest, there hasn't really been, a lot of movement from sales, I should say. But hopefully, one of the things I'm looking at and I'm learning is that it's all about making noise. And it's about making noise in a sustained manner. In fact, you have to be relentless about making noise. And it's just making as much noise as possible in a civilized manner and in a way that gets people interested in you, sort of thing. And that's kind of what marketing is all about. And that's what we're learning here. And I think we're well on our way. Support, I just feel really good about support, and I always feel like I'm really in it. And there's only one particular incident that I mentioned before in the program, and I don't want to get too much detail, but that's the only thing I can think of that was like a hit, and that kind of dinged me for a little bit. But now, every new ticket that is that I encounter and that occurs, I feel really good about it, and also I'm getting really good feedback from the people that I'm helping too, so that's always good. So 8.5. Okay, that does it for this show. I try to keep these about 10-15 minutes, and for beta maybe it might run a little longer, and so here we are at 20 minutes. And I just want to thank everyone out there for your support and all your purchases and activity now. And I just have to say, it's really great to have this additional activity, especially after these past few months of just one thing after another. It felt like, especially with the marketing aspect and whatnot. So it feels like we're kind of turning a corner here a little bit, and I am appreciative. Okay, so I just wanted to thank everyone out there, and until next time, stay safe and stay bright out there. Goodbye.